Tallahassee, Florida, was a rural, quiet suburb. That was until a university professor was left bleeding on his driveway. The man was popular, a father of 2 sons, who had a bright future to look forward to. Police did not have any DNA clues or suspects, and it would be a long process to find out what happened. This is the case of Dan Markel. Dan Markel was born in 1972 in Toronto, Canada. He was extremely intelligent, which led him to becoming very successful. While in education, Dan attended multiple universities. He went to the University of Jerusalem, Cambridge, and then Harvard in 2001, where he achieved his law degree. After 2001, Dan worked as a clerk at a law firm for the next few years. However, in 2005, Dan came across the opportunity to work at Florida State University, College of Law. Dan believed he would be a great fit for this role. He loved law, and he loved teaching law. And Dan also had the qualifications to match. Around this time, Dan was on a dating site for Jewish singles when he met a woman called Wendy Adelson. Wendy was 26 at this time, and Dan was 33 years old. Wendy was interested in law as well, and was actually studying law at this time, and later on, even started teaching law at Florida State University like Dan. The couple hit it off instantly. In a short period, they got engaged, and on the 26th of February 2006, they married. In 2009, Wendy gave birth to their first son, shortly followed by their second son in 2010. Dan's and Wendy's relationship seemed great. They had great jobs, good incomes, and 2 wonderful children. However, in 2012, their perfect relationship came to an end, and they separated, and divorced by 2013. While Dan was away on a work trip, Wendy had stripped the house bare and left with the children. She did, however, leave 2 items, a mattress, and on top of the mattress, divorce papers. The divorce was anything but easy, with Dan describing it as Pearl Harbor. Wendy changed their 2 sons' surnames to hers, and even changed one of their middle names as it was given as tribute to one of Dan's family members that had passed. Despite the mess, the couple kept all the details as to why the relationship came to a sudden end private. But what we do know is, the image displayed outside may not have been what was happening behind closed doors. By 2014, both Dan and Wendy were moving on with their lives, while both regularly seeing their children. Wendy had started writing and wrote a book on human trafficking. Unfortunately, though, the book did not do very well and was described as criminally lousy. On July 18, 2014, like Dan usually would, he headed over to Wendy's house to pick up his 2 sons and take them to preschool. After this, he went to the gym, went to a couple shops, and returned home by 11 a.m. However, as Dan pulled up, he noticed someone was standing, waiting for him. The 2 did not speak. As before, Dan even opened his car door. A shot was fired through the driver's side window, which hit Dan in the middle of the face. A neighbor witnessed the shot and saw Dan sitting upright in his seat. There was blood covering the interior of the car and windshield, and smashed glass everywhere. The neighbor called police and told the dispatcher that they saw a car pull onto the driveway. There was a gunshot, and their neighbor is sitting in the front of the car. They are in a bad way. He's alive but not responding. You need to send an ambulance quickly. When police arrived, they questioned the neighbor to try and get as much information as possible. They told the police they saw a silver Toyota Prius leave the area after the gunshot. Police didn't know if this was linked, but it was at least something to go on and look into. 19 minutes after the police arrived, the ambulance arrived and took Dan to the hospital and into intensive care. If you are wondering why the ambulance took 19 minutes to arrive, the dispatcher Dan's neighbor had spoken to in the police call didn't tell the ambulance how serious Dan's condition was. 14 hours later, sadly, Dan died from his injuries. The police now had a difficult case on their hands. They didn't know why a well-liked, successful family man would have been shot and killed. Police still didn't have anything to go on, so they decided to start where they often do, close to home, with Dan's ex-wife, Wendy. They brought Wendy into the station, free to go as she was not under arrest. In the interview, Wendy listens to a voicemail from her estate agent friend. The voicemail said, "Hi, Wendy. I feel a bit silly doing this. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but there was a shooting around where you used to live today. I hope you are okay, my friend." Wendy looked upset as she listened to the voicemail. Investigators told Wendy that they were sorry she had to hear it that way. They told her there was a shooting, and her ex-husband was seriously injured and was unlikely to survive. Wendy bursted into tears and told investigators she messaged Dan that morning. Everything was okay. She asked them what had happened. They told her they couldn't give her any information until they knew where she was at the time of the shooting. Wendy happily answered the questions. She told investigators she didn't leave her house until around noon. She left the house to do a few jobs. She tried to drive up her old street, but the road was blocked. They asked if she knew anyone that would want to hurt Dan. Wendy said Dan used to rub people up the wrong way sometimes, but she didn't think anyone would cause him harm. They asked if Dan owed anyone money. She said no. "Well, he owes me money." The investigator responded with, "So he owes money to you," which is when Wendy said it wasn't her. Throughout the interview, Wendy did actually seem very upset and shocked, and was crying while answering the questions. A short time after Dan's death, a memorial was held, attended by his family, friends, and students. At this time, the police still didn't have anything to go on. They quickly ruled out a robbery as nothing was taken from Dan, and they didn't try to enter his home. They thought it had to be personal, that Dan had maybe done something, and the person wanted revenge, but they didn't know who or what the motive could be. To try and get more clues, the police made a public appeal. They said that Dan was the intended victim of the crime, that it was premeditated, and not to be a random act of violence. $1,000 reward was originally offered to anyone that could provide information that led to an arrest and conviction. This shortly raised to $25,000. As well as this, police began questioning Dan's family, his friends, and his students. But this didn't lead to any further information. Everyone the police spoke to said that Dan was a good guy, and good father, and a good teacher. They didn't know who or why someone would want to murder him. 12 months comes and goes following Dan's death. The police didn't have any new evidence or leads. On the 1-year anniversary, a press conference took place. In this press conference, for the very first time, police publicly spoke about the Toyota Prius and showed images. The police never explained why they chose to wait 1 year to share this detail about the case. This new information didn't bring in more leads from the public, and by this point, the car could have been hidden or destroyed. It started to seem like any evidence they had was shared too late, and any new potential evidence is probably lost. Suddenly, on May the 26th, 2016, coming up to 2 years since Dan was shot and killed, a judge in Leon County issued a first-degree murder warrant for Dan Markel to 34-year-old Cedfredo Garcia. The police in Tallahassee didn't share any details about the arrest to the public. However, a few days later, a Leon County judge ordered that it be unsealed and made public. New information came out that police thought on the 16th and 17th of July. Gracia, along with 33-year-old Luis Rivera, traveled together from Miami in a rented Toyota Prius, staying at different motels. The police gathered cell phone data and camera security footage of them both. On the 18th of July, they are seen following Dan as he dropped off his sons at preschool, went to the gym, to the shops, and then to his home. Police had yet to, however, work out why these two men would want to shoot and murder Dan. A possible idea came from an anonymous informant. They believed that this could have been a murder for hire. But who would have hired them? Well, this information didn't actually take long to come out. Rivera and Garcia didn't want the blame to be on them, so they were quick to tell police that Charlie and Donna Adelson were the ones that hired them. Charlie was Wendy's brother, and Donna was their mother. Charlie and Donna were a liked and respected part of the community. Charlie was a dentist, and Donna used to manage the patients at Adelson Institute Dentistry Practice. Although police now had names, this still was not enough to make any arrests. Police didn't want to accuse a successful family over two criminals without any evidence. It wasn't long after that police came across a woman called Catherine Magbanua. Catherine had previously been in a relationship and had 2 children with Sigfredo Garcia, and was not in a relationship with Wendy's brother Charlie. Police had Catherine's phone data, and it showed that Luis Rivera had called her straight after the shooting. Rivera and Garcia and the Adelson family had never met. Catherine did the communication between the both of them and was paid $100,000 to organize it. Police could see tens of thousands of dollar deposits into her bank before and after Dan's murder. A mistake that the Adelsons made is that they used checks for many of the deposits. Checks have to be signed, which makes them extremely easy to trace. Each check was signed by Donna Adelson. It was discovered that Donna hated Dan. Months leading up to Dan's shooting, Donna had sent Wendy emails calling Dan horrible names. In one email, she told Wendy that she had suffered under Dan long enough. That when they were married, Dan's narcissism ruined her marriage, and they should hit him where it hurts, in his weak points. Although Wendy lived in Tallahassee, she did want to move back to Miami to be with her family. However, Dan filed an order with the courts that prevented Wendy from moving away with their children. This was allowed to go through as they agreed during their divorce proceedings they would share 50-50 custody. It would be hard to meet these terms if Wendy moved further away with the children. Dan also went to court before his death to file a motion stopping Donna spending time with the boys alone or unsupervised. Dan said it was because of all the abuse he was receiving from her. Police thought maybe Donna was angry at Dan and took revenge. Shockingly, however, without bail and serving time for a different charge, Luis Rivera wanted to share a different story. Luis told investigators that he would give them information if they agreed to a deal. Investigators were intrigued by what Luis had to say, and they agreed to interview him again. Luis told them that he didn't know anyone was going to be killed. He got into the car with Garcia and was told it was an easy drug robbery. He was then upset when he was told about the plan to kill Dan, and suggested robbing the woman that hired them instead. He said he didn't want to kill someone who had 2 children, who he had never met, and had nothing against them. Luis said he didn't know his name, or what he looked like until Garcia showed him a picture. He said he also never knew of the Adelsons, but that Catherine was the woman behind it all. Luis said they were given the contract because she wanted full custody of her children. To note, the Adelsons were denying they had anything to do with Dan's murder, and although police had signed checks for Donna, they couldn't use them to prove she wanted Dan killed. Eventually, the FBI were brought onto the case, and they decided to begin a sting operation on the Adelsons. Sandy and undercover police officers started calling Charlie, asking him why Rivera was not being taken care of inside prison, and why his family wasn't being taken care of. The FBI tried this to get Charlie to say something that would incriminate himself. This, however, failed. In July 2016, in Leon County, a grand jury indicted Garcia and Rivera on first-degree murder charges. Catherine was arrested a short time after, likely due to his cooperation in the case and pleading guilty. Rivera's sentence was changed to second-degree murder, and he was given 19 extra years. This was on top of 12 years he was serving for the other charges. Sigfredo and Katharina were tried together on October 19th. It was decided to put their cases together as they were facing the same charges. During the trial, the defense blamed Charlie Adelson. They said that Charlie had arranged the whole thing. They alleged he promised $100,000, split between the three of them to kill Dan. They said he did this so that Wendy could have full custody of the children and Dan couldn't interfere and stop her. During the prosecutor's turn, they brought out Wendy's ex-boyfriend Jeffrey Lacasse as a witness. He said he heard from Wendy the night Charlie had talked about hiring a hitman. He said that on July 13, Wendy had asked him if she could share something confidentially. And he said she could. She told him that Charlie had looked at all options for her problem. And he spoke about getting a hitman, which would cost about $50,000. During Ciafredo's defense, he said that the shot was fired by Luis Rivera, while Luis was claiming it was Sigfredo. However, Sigfredo was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without parole and 30 additional years for conspiracy. He said he would appeal the sentence. Catherine denied she was involved in the murder. During the trial, her charges were changed to second-degree murder. The jury also couldn't reach a decision, forcing the judge to order a mistrial. The retrial was set and begun on the 16th of May, 2022. This time, 11 days later, on the 27th of May, the jury were able to reach a decision, and Catherine was found guilty of first-degree murder and solicitation to commit murder. She was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. 30 years was also added for solicitation, and a further 30 for conspiracy. Surprising or unsurprising, the arrests were not over. On the 21st of April 2022, the police went to Charlie's home and arrested him for first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation to commit murder. New evidence, in the form of audio recording, was discovered between Charlie and Catherine. In the recordings, they were talking about the plot to kill Dan. Charlie Adelson's trial was set for April 2023, later moved to October 2023. Although there is much speculation, there is no evidence that Wendy had any involvement. It's easy to see why many would think she knew something. The plan was so she could have full custody of her children, the conversation she had with Jeffrey. However, importantly, there's still no evidence. Maybe some more information will come out during Charlie's trial. We have to wait and see. We will keep you updated. Until then, stay safe, stay smart.